1045 The Team, your home for New York sports. Joining us right now is Anthony DiComo from MLB.com. So, Anthony, with the Mets, I mean, a lot of the conversations right now are about the injuries. Is this team snake bit? Do they pick the wrong guys? Do they need to be bubble wrapped? What's the deal?
Well, I mean, at some point, when this happens year after year, and frankly, decade after decade, you can't just say a team is snake bitten. You have to say there's something systemic going on here, and that's what the Mets thought they were solving this past offseason. They fired a couple members of the training staff. They brought in some people from the outside. They really tried to overhaul and revamp the systems they had in place in terms of communications and protocol and just how they dealt with injuries and things like that as they came up. And they really thought that they had hit on something, that this was going to be something they had done poorly in the past, that they would do well now. And, the same old story has unfolded in 2018. So you have to think that what they did and what they put in place doesn't work. So clearly there are still a lot of issues internally here in terms of how the Mets deal with injuries, how the Mets communicate with their players, how the front office communicates with the coaching staff and the medical staff, and all of that stuff. And it looks very much unsolved. Over the weekend, Yoenis Cespedes was a prime example of that. He said on Friday night that, coming back from the DL, but by the way, I might need surgery on both of my heels, and it could cost me 8 to 10 months. And then about 12 hours later, first thing in the morning, Mickey Callaway said, I have no idea what Yoenis Cespedes said. I was totally unaware. So it's just not the message you want to be sending as an organization, that the right hand doesn't know what the left is doing, and that's the type of thing that has bedeviled the Mets in the past. They thought they had solved it, like I said, but here it is again in 2018, cropping its head again.
And is this going to be something that does Mickey Callaway in? Is he still going to get next year, or at least a start next year?
I still think he'll get the start of next year. Now, certainly this wasn't the situation that Mickey Callaway signed up for, because even if he does begin next year as manager, you're probably looking at a situation where a bad 20-25 game stretch to start the season could do him in. And, when you sign a first-time manager to a 3-year deal, you think you're getting a little more than that. Is this Mickey Callaway's fault? Partly. I think certainly some blame does go on him. I think certainly some blame goes on the front office, some blame goes on the players, and some blame goes on ownership. I really think every single party here is to blame for what's happened to the Mets. So to put it squarely on Mickey Callaway's shoulders would be wrong. But to also say that, the things that have gone wrong are completely out of his control and over his head, I think would also be incorrect.
Will this, Anthony DiComo with us right now from MLB.com, Mets reporter, will this be like a chief point in who they name for the GM? Like whoever comes in, how do you fix all these things?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're watching history repeat itself. I mean, this is, after 2009, 2010, this is the situation that the Mets were in. It looked like their good run of a few years prior had come to an end, and everything was a mess, and they brought in Sandy Alderson to be that guy that you just described, that guy who can come in and take charge and fix things. And, I guess you can argue whether or not it worked. They did make it all the way to the World Series in 2015, but I think a 2-year window of being a competitive, good baseball team is not what the Mets were after so many years of losing. So, yes, they will look this winter for a GM, for someone who can come in and fix things, but will it work? I mean, or are we, as I said, watching history doomed to repeat itself? We shall see. Right now, the way the front office is unfolding in Sandy Alderson's absence, you've got 3 guys, in John Ricco, J.P. Ricciardi, Omar Minaya, all of whom have pretty solid levels of front office experience. But I think there's a notion within the front office that you can't continue indefinitely with 3 guys running the show. There's just too much opportunity for confusion, too much opportunity for disagreement, and so on and so forth. So ultimately, the Mets will look for one of those, or for one person to kind of take the reins here, whether it's one of the 3 they already have in place or someone from the outside.
I got to go back to the Cespedes Mickey Callaway conversation, because Cespedes is still the guy who goes by the beat of his own drum. I think that's fair to say. A guy who used to ride horses into spring training. Did he just come out of the blue and say this? And was there no talk between Callaway? Is Callaway supposed to know this? Where is the disconnect here?
Well, that's the issue. This heel injury is something that everyone agrees now that Cespedes has had for 15 years. He's had it since his teenager. He's had it since well before he was ever a New York Met. And yet, here's Mickey Callaway on Saturday morning saying, I have no idea what this is about, and blah, blah, blah. And, it's something that Cespedes has managed, but for the manager of the team to come out and say, I don't know, this is the first I'm hearing of it, it's a really bad look. And either it really is the first that he's hearing of it, in which case that's a huge red flag, or Mickey Callaway's just not telling the truth about it, and that's also a huge red flag. So it goes back to, like I said, it's communication at all levels of the organization, management, front office, on-field personnel, players, medical staff, training staff. Everyone has to be in sync. Everyone has to be on the same page, and it's very clear here that they are not, which is damning in itself. But then you throw in the fact that this is what the Mets spent their offseason fixing, to the extent that instead of bringing in a ton of new players and going out and spending a ton of money, they said, no, we've got this new medical and training staff. We've got Mickey Callaway who can organize it all and oversee it all, and this is going to be how we beat the rest of the league. This is going to be how we get better. But then to sit here in July and none of that has happened is very troubling and very concerning.
From MLB.com, Anthony DiComo with us right now. DiComo, sorry. Anthony, the prevailing wisdom is there won't be any major move from the Mets at the trade deadline, especially not somebody like Jacob deGrom or Noah Syndergaard. Is there any scenario you can hash out in your brain where you could see something happening?
There's always a chance, and I would put it 1 or 2% that someone really does come in and back up the Brinks truck and give you so much young talent in exchange for one of those guys that you just cannot say no. And the Mets have kind of said that outwardly, that if someone really, really blows us away, yeah, we were totally open to trading those guys. But that's kind of code for saying we're not trading them. I really don't think the Mets have the appetite. Jacob deGrom in particular is just an unbelievably popular Met, one of the most popular Mets in franchise history. To trade him even in the midst of all this chaos and a lost season and everything we just talked about is something that I don't think the front office and I don't think ownership at the end of the day is going to have the stomach to do. Now, you can certainly argue that they should, because if they don't trade Jacob deGrom or Noah Syndergaard or even Zach Wheeler to a certain extent, you're looking at a team that's going to be very hard to improve this offseason. And the Mets have gone a few years now with kind of bringing back the same pieces and kind of bringing back the same team, and it clearly hasn't worked. This clearly isn't a team that's capable of staying healthy enough for long enough to play well enough to make the playoffs and to go on a run in October. So if that's not the case, then why not just blow it up and trade Jacob deGrom and trade Noah Syndergaard and put yourself in last place for a couple of years so that you can get out of this hole quicker instead of year by year by year going through with these third and fourth place teams. So that's the argument for, certainly. But as I said, I don't think in the end the Mets are going to have the stomach to trade just an ultra-popular player who's at the top of his game right now in Jacob deGrom.
Any chance you see them make significant moves in free agency?
I really don't, because like I just said, you look at where this team is and you look at what the roster is right now, and you would be bringing back, if you don't trade any of these big guys, you would be bringing back a very similar pitching staff with deGrom, Syndergaard, Wheeler, Matz, those guys who you're counting on. Jason Vargas is still under contract. You look at the infield, you still have Todd Frazier under contract. Ahmed Rosario is still your shortstop. Second base is a place where you can make a move, but that's one position. Your outfield is already overcrowded with Brandon Nimmo and Michael Conforto, Cespedes, Jay Bruce. So where do you go out and make this big splash? There's not an obvious place to do it. So if the Mets don't blow things up the deadline, I could very easily see an offseason similar to what we've seen, in which they go out and get some relievers. They get maybe a second baseman this year. Maybe they add another starting pitcher for a bit of depth. But is that going to move the needle and make the Mets a winning team in 2019? It's hard to say yes after you look at what's happened in 17 and 18.
Anthony DiComo, man, we appreciate you. MLB.com. Check out the stuff. Follow him on Twitter, Anthony DiComo. Just good Mets stuff, and we appreciate you.
You got it. Anytime.